Hello, and welcome to episode 37 of the Extreme Hardware Podcast. We are joined with a relatively full crowd tonight. Going down the list, we have our lovely editor, Navjack.
Hey, everybody.
We've got our favorite furry Axifer.
Hey.
We've got Chocolate Horseman.
Oh.
And Chris. All right.
Oh, wow, that's an interesting. You know what?
well, you did say that you were angry before the recording, so I figured I would just keep that fire going.
Right. Yeah.
So our very first topic that we would like to talk about today. So good news, everybody. ExtremeHardware.net is actually alive again. However, you have to use the right link. Otherwise, you come to the default splash page because we don't have a homepage yet. So what you need to do is go to extremehw.net/forums to find the account. All of your credentials still work because our administrator actually knows what he's doing. The only thing I will say is for whatever reason, we don't have a subscriptions manager page yet. Allegedly, that is in the works, but all of the old content is there and functional as far as I can tell. Enjoy. Post your memes and off topic.
Yeah, post your memes and on topic.
No.
I will cut you.
Yes.
Please use a knife.
No. All right. So we our big name title that we've got today, Nvidia 3000 series, because you clearly heard it from us first and nowhere else.
That's right. Hey, we're technically, depending on when Jack gets this edited and uploaded, we're technically beating AnandTech because Mr. Ryan Smith promised an article Friday evening and it just didn't happen.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They don't post stuff on the weekends.
Good to know. So we are doing better than AnandTech. Fantastic. In our last recording, we talked about the rumors about the 3000 series cards, specifically the 3070, 3080, and the 3090 GPUs. And thanks to NVIDIA's keynote that they had, when was this? Did this occur on September 2nd, I believe? No, September 1st. We now have specifications for the 3070, 3080, and the 3090, and then we also have designs for the Founders Edition GPU. So going into some of the details, the 3070 allegedly has 5,888 CUDA cores, a base clock of 1.5 gigahertz, a boost clock of 1.7 gigahertz, and 8 gigs of GDDR6. The 3080
can it run remastered Crisis?
Haha, XD. That's the funny video game that us gamers play.
To be fair, the new Crisis Remastered is coming out and it will be more intense than the old one. So he's not wrong.
That is correct. However, it wasn't a funny meme in the year we don't talk about, and it's not a funny meme now.
Correct. So the 3080 has 8,704 CUDA cores, 1.4 gigahertz base clock, 1.7 turbo, and 10 gigabytes of GDDR6X. And then the 3090 has 10,496 CUDA cores, base clock 1.4 gigahertz, turbo clock 1.7 gigahertz, and 24 gigabytes of GDDR6X.
Whoa, 24 gigabytes? Oh my god, that's as many as was on the Titan RTX last generation.
Hey, you called it, my guy.
Half as much as was on the Quadro RTX. Okay, look, here's the deal. First thing that I want to say, because it's been pissing me off to no end, VRAM. So this is the third generation in a row that NVIDIA is using 8 gigabit memory chips. So like when they went from the 700 series to the 900 series, they went from 2 gig to 4 gig memory chips. When they went from the 900 series to the 10 series, they doubled it again. But Turing, same amount of VRAM. Ampere, same amount of VRAM. They technically have an excuse, kind of. GDDR6X is not available in 16 gigabit capacities yet per chip. So the 3090 is achieving this by using clamshell mode. So there's 2 memory chips per controller rather than just 1. But that increases complexity. That increases costs. I'm sure that finding chips that work with that kind of signal, especially at that speed, and using PAM4 signaling, etc., is going to be a nightmare. But there's no excuse to do that on the 3070 because, well, that's just basic GDDR6. Like, Nvidia has the ability right now to make a 32 gigabyte 3070 equivalent if they so desire for like the professional market.
Sure.
So there have been some leaks of a 3070 Ti in Lenovo workstations, which do have 16 gigabytes. Personally, that's what I'm going to end up holding out for. Just like hoping that actually hits retail, because that's not a guarantee. There's been a bunch of GPUs that Nvidia has made that are like OEM exclusive, even in the relatively high end. Like, the 3070 isn't really high end, but it's $500. That's out of budget for the majority of gamers.
It's high end. It's high end in performance, not in price or segment.
Yeah, because going to the price and the relative performance that Nvidia was advertising, and of course, since this is coming straight from Nvidia, I'm taking this with a very, very large pile of salt.
Whoa, you heard the salt beam.
All the 2080 Ti people are in shambles right now.
Yeah. So the 3070 is allegedly going to be MSRP at $500. The 3080 is going to be MSRP at $700, and the 3090, when it does eventually come out, will be at $1,500. Now, where people are starting to flip their crap is Nvidia is marketing the 3070 against the 2080 Ti, and they're saying that it should outperform it at $500.
I would not be surprised. I would
look at the amount of cores, the TMUs, the ROPs. Compare. Right. I mean, it should. It just should.
Yeah. I'm a little bit concerned though, because correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the memory bandwidth on the 2080 Ti higher or more closely related to the memory bandwidth on the 3090?
Absolutely not, dude.
Well, I mean, in terms of the bus width.
Oh, wow, yeah, the bus width, but that doesn't matter.
Okay, fair.
Like, genuinely, especially with GPUs, it's all about, like, width.
Well, what is it?
Keep in mind that with the new 3000 series, they also announced the Direct I/O SSD buses, too, which is going to alleviate a lot of the need for loading textures into memory on loading, which might reduce the amount of VRAM you might think you actually need for gaming. Now, for creators, we definitely need more VRAM, but that's where I see they're going to come out with something else, or the Quadros, or a Titan S card that has all that extra VRAM, double-sided or something. But for the gaming ones, if they're going to keep the prices down low by keeping it low memory, maybe that's just a good thing for gamers. And they might artificially limit. I can see Nvidia artificially limiting the 3000 series more than they have in the past. So in terms of like your NVENC number of streams, or how many CUDA cores you can activate at once in things like compute, they might limit that.
I don't think they would do
with
that.
The GeForce drivers, just to push people to Quadros and stuff.
Now, the only thing that's really confirmed is that they're halving the tensor performance on GeForce branded stuff. Presumably that will be full power on like Quadro stuff. As for like other things, it's going to work at full tilt. Like, there's no reason it shouldn't. That's just... You're just shooting yourself in the foot otherwise, and you'd be better off selling a smaller, cheaper GPU for the same price.
And I would say, to build on that real quick, Chris, is the big thing is, if they were to go with that kind of segmentation, artificial segmentation between the GPUs, and then say AMD for whatever reason they actually do have something that competes with these cards here in the next 6 months, and then I don't think they will either. I'm not optimistic at all. But imagine in this rainbow world where things are just magically AMD is competing, and then they start marketing. Hey, look, we didn't artificially limit. Here you go. And then Nvidia comes back and says, "Oh, well, here's the software patch." No, that's a marketing right.
So. Okay, I guess the thing about VRAM is, so the 3070 has about 20% less memory bandwidth than the 2080 Ti. The 3080 has about 20% more. The 3090 is a freaking monster. That is almost 1 terabyte per second, and that's not even HBM, which is neat.
Yeah, it's impressive.
So, Frick, stop sniffing, you goddamn horse. Yeah, I mean, like, memory bandwidth's there. I'm not really concerned about that. It's really the capacity that gets me, because the thing is, I mean, not only is the 3070 a 256-bit card with the same amount of VRAM as a 2 generations old 256-bit card, it has the same VRAM as my RX 480. It's got the same VRAM as, like, you know, other 8 gigabit GDDR5 cards. But also it has the same amount of VRAM as the 390 and the 390X, which, if I remember correctly, were released in like early 2015.
Yeah.
We're dealing with standard amounts of VRAM on something that came out very early in the last console generation. We're on the cusp of a new console generation. So I don't know.
So I do have one other question though. Does anybody know off the top of their head what the estimated power draw on the 2080 Ti was?
2080 Ti. I didn't think to check the TDP.
Yeah, let me check.
The recommended power supply is 650 watts, and
I think it's a 250 watt V BIOS, like at 100%.
Yeah, 250 watt TDP, 650 watt power supply.
Okay.
So the numbers that Nvidia is recommending are not like completely out of the blue. Like, it's 100 watts hotter stock, and they recommend a 100 watt more powerful power supply. Like, okay. Whatever.
That's pretty lateral.
That's fine.
But what I am going to say here, and the power, the estimated power from Nvidia for the 3070, 220 watts, and the 2080 Ti, according to Tom's Hardware, they measured 279 watts. So, you know, with the die shrink, yeah, it makes sense. So nothing out of the ordinary there. I think this GPU is, if this thing does come even close to what Nvidia is advertising right now, it's definitely the Pascal killer that they're trying to push.
Isn't that what the CEO said at the conference? He said Pascal owners, now it's safe to upgrade.
Yeah, they did say that. They're really trying to kill the Pascal.
They just pulled it out.
Yeah. I do think that the most interesting thing, so like, because you mentioned RDNA 2, if AMD can compete, I've been seeing like several people on the Twitter saying like, oh, you know, you shouldn't leave AMD out of this. You know, you shouldn't. You know, Leather Jacket Man might be good, but you haven't seen what Mama Sue has to offer, because it's just right. But anyway, the thing is though, right now the 5700 XT competes like somewhere between a 2070 and a 2080. It's somewhere in that ballpark. The 2080 Ti is a good like 30-40% faster than that, and if the 3070 is supposed to outperform a 2080 Ti, okay, cool. So let's say that AMD like doubles their performance with RDNA 2. They're still only competing with like the 3080, just based on some ballpark estimates in my head. Like, they ain't touching the 3090, which is what were they saying? Like 36 teraflops at stock. Yeah, and I mean, I know that's not really like a great indicator of performance, because that's more for compute, but for GPUs, it works out pretty well because they tend to parallelize nicely. Like, Amdahl's law is very nice to graphics rendering. So yeah, course times gigahertz is a pretty good way to get like a decent estimate of performance. So like, yeah, we're looking at, I mean, just Jesus, like insane numbers. I don't think AMD is going to be able to match this reasonably.
And they're also going to be on the first generation of their own ray tracing hardware too.
Yeah, Nvidia's already got that in the bag, and frankly, I just trust Nvidia to do this kind of thing better than AMD.
I mean, yeah, that's it. We just don't have a track record.
AMD has a track record of making GPUs that do rasterization well, but not a whole lot else. I think, what was the other thing? Oh, right. So, big advantage for NVIDIA here is, remember, 12 nanometer that was used for Turing was the same density approximately as 16 nanometer used for Pascal. It was just like a refined process node. So, Turing was ultimately going to be like not really brand new, amazing fast as far as performance goes, just because of the nature of the node. Like, yeah, sure, Nvidia pulled off Kepler to Maxwell, but I think that one was more of a fluke than anything. But even then, Turing was... It was all right at the high end, or if you were going from like mid-range Pascal to high-end Turing or something, okay, sure, whatever. AMD doesn't really have the luxury that they had going from Polaris and Vega to RDNA, because they don't have the node shrink. Because as far as I know, RDNA 2 is supposed to be 7 nanometer, isn't it?
I think that's what they're going for.
But wasn't Navi also a lot smaller than people thought it would be as well? So they still have a lot of potential space. They could make the die bigger.
Maybe. I'm skeptical. I'm really and truly skeptical. I don't know. I don't know. Yes, it was a small die, but that's also kind of an indicator that Nvidia is forcing an AMD's hand, and oopsie whoopsie, we got to go back to the small die strategy because we couldn't make it work with Vega. And partly, I think that was because HBM just ate into their margins every time they did make a sale.
Yeah, here we go. So Vega 64 was almost 500 millimeters squared.
Yes.
Whereas Navi was only 250.
Right. Also, keep in mind, brand new process and fairness.
But I mean, that means if you were to have, like, let's say a 350 or 400 millimeters squared 7-meter Navi, that might be a lot more competitive with the higher end Nvidia stuff. But I mean,
well, sure, but that implies that just requires a lot of things on AMD's part, because remember, the small die strategy. God, when did they even start doing that? I think it was around like 4000 series, maybe the 3000 series.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure it was GCN, wasn't it?
No, small die strategy is way older than that. GCN was one of their biggest dies in a long time, like Tahiti was, and they actually stopped doing that for a bit with Hawaii and later Fiji. They kind of resumed with Polaris and again with Navi, but it's not that AMD can't make big dies, it's that it's not profitable to, because nobody's really buying them. That takes a lot of R&D. They're a lot trickier to fab, etc.
So
yeah, I can't see. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I did want to touch on something else that you brought up earlier, the RTX IO that you briefly mentioned. Would you like to elaborate on that a little more? Because I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so basically what NVIDIA is touting is that at the NVIDIA driver level, they're coming up with a way to directly access NVMe SSDs over PCI Express bus, which with PCI Express 4 being a thing now, that's a pretty big thing. If they can somehow directly talk to an
it's
SSD,
a thing, but they can't assume that it's standard.
And avoid the CPU and avoid memory and everything, that's going to be a huge bandwidth increase direct for textures, or if you're doing compute, or if you're doing media transcoding, game streaming, all that kind of stuff. My only fear is that I don't know how that's going to integrate with a system SSD, or if it's going to have to be a dedicated SSD that's not being used by the actual operating system at the same time.
That would be suicide if you have to buy your own scratch disk to make that work.
You can read about it here on Microsoft's website.
Ooh.
All right, let's see. Direct storage.
Oh, so this is a technology that
Yeah. They're just calling it RTX IO, but essentially at the bare level, it's this.
Okay. Which honestly, I mean, seeing Xbox Series X in the first sentence, I understand completely why this has been researched.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah, so it'll be curious to see how the driver does that, if it's going to be DirectX level or if it's going to be up to graphic manufacturers to come up with their own APIs. So you have Intel, Nvidia, AMD, and ARM with theirs. I forget what they call their GPU architecture right now. Yeah. And then whatever, Qualcomm's got their own few. Raspberry Pi uses some other different ones.
Ooh, fun thing about Qualcomm and Adreno. So Adreno was tech that was licensed from ATI, like ATI, and it was, I believe, the very newest architecture immediately before they made the Xbox 360 architecture. So basically, they had ATI, and then they just like ATI tech, and then they just diverged to the point where they made a unified shader architecture, which is neat. Anyway, yeah, no, I'd also like to give a shout out to my boy, the Radeon SSG. That one Vega 64 card that had two M2 slots on it.
Yeah.
I want to get one of those, but they cost thousands and thousands of dollars even now.
Here's the thing. I give it about 4 years when the hardware is so deprecated it doesn't matter, and then you can buy one and play with it.
I don't know. I feel like it's going to be something like the Xeon Phi, where it just stays way too damn expensive for years and
with no development.
Sell your Corolla and buy one.
There you go.
How many they make if it's a limited supply to begin with, and they're going to become even more rare as time goes on.
That's true. Yeah.
It's weird.
See, I'm loving the idea of the direct IO,
too.
Assuming that it's just DirectX level or something. That's going to be huge for content creation and media transcoding.
Yeah,
I don't think it's actually end of life yet. If I remember correctly, the SSG was like a $5,000 premium over the WX 9100, and the only thing they did was add a PLX chip. I mean, the idea is drivers, but.
Okay, so a lot of people have been freaking out from the reviewers in regards to the new cooler design. First of all, I've got to give Nvidia credit. They didn't try to make a Macintosh branded reference cooler like they did with the 2000 series. And this one actually, just from general appearance, looks like it is more. Yes, words are hard, but it looks like just from general appearance, they're trying to go for a more function over form kind of design with this thing, where it looks like the entire Founders Edition GPU is mostly heats. Now on the 3070, it appears to be a lot closer to what we saw on the 2000 series Founders Edition GPUs, where you have just two fans.
It's not 300 watts.
Right. Yeah. You just got two fans on the front of the card, and it exhausts out the back of the GPU. And then there's a little notch on the side. I don't know if that's going to be ventilation, but it's intended to suck air in, blow it out the back. Now on the 3080 and the 3090, there is one fan on the traditional front of the GPU, and then there's one fan which is going to be spinning in reverse that is mounted to the back of the GPU. And I also included this next image, which this is from Twitter user Harukaze. They managed to get a bare PCB photo of the 3090 card. So what's actually kind of interesting about this GPU is, for one, it is massive. The dimensions that they have advertised from the big thing that they did was it's going to be really similar in size to like the 1080 Ti classified GPU, or
it's like a Titan Z. It's like a 7990. It's just one of those big ass like air cooled dual GPU cards of the old days.
Right. So basically you have one fan mounted closer to the IO on the front of the PCB that's just like directly over like the memory and the die itself, and then blows in and then gets exhausted out the IO on the GPU. And then you have the second fan, which is mounted to where the backplate would be on modern GPUs. And it is intended to suck air through the front of the GPU and exhaust it out right in front of your tower CPU cooler.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well, I think even worse, you got to specify, most of them, that rear fan that's blowing upwards, not so much blowing into the CPU tower isn't the main issue. So Steve from Gamers Next was actually talking with this on one of his, that him and, I forget his name from actually hardcore overclocking right now.
Oh, Buildzoid, yeah.
Yeah, Buildzoid. He did some tests, and what he actually found was that hot air was actually enough, could be enough with simulated by a hairdryer, to cause issues with XMP memory.
Okay,
that's running at higher speeds as well.
So I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I actually watched Buildzoid's video where he was talking about that. He was doing basically 5,000 megahertz clocks on DDR4 just because he could. And when the ambient temperature in his room increased 5 degrees Celsius, he had to increase the voltage on his RAM from 1.6 to 1.65 volts just to maintain some form of stability, but he was still receiving errors after the temperature increased that much. I appreciate what Steve from Gamer's Nexus was saying, but I feel like that kind of extreme level of temperature sensitivity isn't really relevant on a stock GPU. Like,
you say that, but think about it. Not everyone's an enthusiast who's getting these. So look at how many cases Steve's reviewed lately that don't have good airflow.
Yeah.
See, and that's a good point as well. But I also feel like if Nvidia is engineers are doing their job, then they should be able to account for the fact that crappy case manufacturers are not getting the point that you shouldn't suffocate your GPU.
Well, this is also, I guess we should preface this all with, this is, for the most part, the Founders Edition cards.
Right.
Because if someone's building an ITX build
ones
or something else like that, they're probably not going to be buying a Founders. They're going to be buying something else that's not the stupid half slot above the card for the heatsink, plus 2 slots below. Plus, it sticks out an extra inch from the regular PCI width.
Yep.
It's like, this is not a card that's built to fit in most extreme cases or like ITX in small cases. You don't get the Founders. You're going to be getting an aftermarket card that has a
more
realistic heatsink.
I think the only reason that they didn't use a triple slot bracket was so people who do have certain excessively large ITX cases can actually install it. Because remember, ITX is 2 slot, so if they do 3 slot, then you'd need to get a custom bracket.
Yeah, but plus all the new aftermarket cards, like the colorful cards that just got announced, and I think the EVGA cards, they're all triple slot. And the way that they're designed is like, it's like 3 fans, 2 120s and an 80, and that's it. That's the extent that they're going. So it's not like the aftermarket ones are like super revolutionary or anything.
The big thing is the Founders Edition cards is that there's so much thickness above the slot. So on the back side of the PCB, that might interfere with lower memory slots, because like I know on some AMD boards, those memory slots get really close to where a long graphics card would go, or the rear I/O plate if it's got like a fully integrated I/O cover, like some ASRock boards. That thickness might actually interfere with some of those I/O covers or memory slots.
Well, and actually, I do have a slight rant about that. Triple slot GPUs used to be a thing back in when I was first getting into a PC building back in 2012, 2013. My very first GPU was a 7970. It was a true triple slot GPU. Yeah. For whatever god awful reason, I guess GPU or these add-in board partner GPU manufacturers just decided, triple slot's too big, so we're just going to use a 2-slot I/O cover and then just have it extend like 2 slots below the other 2 covers and hope for the best. Yeah. No, stop that.
What is their logic for doing that exactly?
I don't think there's good logic.
Because I can't think of any reason whatsoever to do that.
These
card where the cooler is bigger than the slot.
Yeah, no, because like the trend lately has been like these 2.5 slot GPUs on these high-end cards in air quotes.
Well, the 2.5 slot
like an EP excuse at that point.
I'll think the 2.5 slot gets you a half slot of guaranteed clearance from the card below it. So extra air intake potentially, so you're not buttoned up against something else.
Yeah.
And you also have the cards where the heatsink goes over the PCB. Well, if they've got airflow going over those fins, that's a lot less resistance now, which means you're going to have more airflow without having to put like a high static pressure fan, which means they're going to save on the fan, they're going to save on fan noise by having a good path for the air to flow out of the card.
So yeah, okay, I understand what you're getting at, but you can still accomplish the same thing with a 3-slot I/O bracket, and that will give you more case rigidity. That's my biggest issue. Is
so they can't call it a 2-slot card.
It's a 2-slot card because it has 2 slots that bolt into the case. That doesn't necessarily mean that if they make it 3-slot, then it absolutely cannot fit into an ITX case where only 3 slots are available. However, if they make it, if it's 2.5 slots and they have 3 metal expansion slot brackets on the side of the card, that cannot fit in ITX cases at all. However, if they only have 2 slots, then yes, that is going to block 2 additional expansion slots on a motherboard, but it will not block that many in the case, and you can potentially still use that in like an ITX system. It depends on the size of your box.
I guess.
Don't talk about the size of my box.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the last thing I wanted to actually cover is Seasonic has apparently been partnering with Nvidia on these new Founders Edition cards. If you have looked at the renders at all, you notice that we are no longer using two 8-pin power supply connectors. We're now using
what the heck?
We're now using a 12-pin.
Whoa!
Power supply connector. It is the funny thing.
Yeah,
it's about time. The world is clamoring for this.
No, actually, yes, Frick, shut up. I'm going to be real shit talk here now.
Go for it.
Minifit Junior sucks, and it needs to be killed. It's like, I'm not actually sure precisely how old it is because corporations don't archive things, so I can't find any like release dates. The youngest age that I can peg for it is like 28 years old. It may be about 40. Minifit Junior just doesn't really need to exist anymore. Molex Microfit, which is what Nvidia is using on Ampere, is far superior. Each pin takes up about half the area as Minifit Junior. But each pin is also rated for approximately as much current, which means the 12-pin connector that NVIDIA is using can handle about as much current as two
8-pin connectors. Yes,
two 6-pin connectors are rated for according to Molex's standards, while taking up the space of one 6-pin connector. However, because the PCI Express specification says a 6-pin connector is rated for 75 watts, in the same footprint, NVIDIA has introduced a connector that provides 8 times the power to the GPU. Like, we do not need to be using Minifit Junior anymore. The only reason that we are is because ATX is 25 years old and still requires that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a cool cable. I don't see, because that's the other thing is like in our document, I added a bunch of links to a bunch of the third-party companies that are building these GPUs. I think I only saw one of them that is using this 12-pin proprietary connector.
None of the aftermarket 3080s or any of that are using 12-pin.
They're using dual 8-pin connectors. And
kind of
with the exception of the Kingpin card, which is from EVGA, which I think is using 3 8-pins because but that's just what Kingpin does. So I can't complain.
For a very long time, the official PCI Express standard only allowed for one 6-pin and one 8-pin for 300 watts of power in total on a card. I think they relatively recently amended it to allow 2 8-pins, but like NVIDIA's single 6-pin outpowers that by 300 watts by a factor of 2. And it's incredibly small. Like, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. There is no reason to use Microfit other than Minifit is still established in the industry. That's it.
Right.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not still going to happen for years and years and years.
Well, so Chris, I actually do have a question for you. Do you theorize that with NVIDIA moving to this 12-pin connector that we'll start seeing changes in standardized GPU pinout?
I do not think so, not necessarily. So NVIDIA has like requested that this be standardized, which is good because let's be honest, AMD's high-end stuff would benefit from this as well because, well, of course it would. I do not believe, though, that this will necessarily be commonplace because those are 6 ground pins and 6 12-volt pins. The thing is, 6-pin and 8-pin power connectors, they include sense pins that actually like tell the system, you know, hey, I'm an 8-pin socket, but I've only got a 6-pin connector plugged in.
Right.
So that's going to be a little bit of a problem if you don't have a power supply that's like beefy enough for that, because suddenly, well, your dual 3090 card is going to be requesting like the same amount of power as your 3070, and you're just going to trip OCP if your power supply is small enough. I don't know. I think the standard would have to be modified to see like widespread adoption.
Yeah, but Chris, keep in mind though, since most power supplies that people are buying are going to be modular for the high-end Ampere stuff, there's no reason why they can't. Power supply manufacturers like Seasonic won't limit the power supplies they include the 12-pin connector with.
Oh,
to
yeah,
their
no.
650 plus watt models.
That's the thing. I don't
and only include enough.
I don't doubt that manufacturers will do that. Well, maybe it'll be like when we transition from just maybe a mate and lock connector, the Molex connector, quote unquote, that one, the one that everyone hates. Maybe it'll be like when we transition from that to PCI Express Power, the dedicated ones, and it's like, all right, well, you can use one of these adapters. Also, there's a chance that you'll start a fire because half of them suck and the original connectors aren't rated for nearly enough power. But yeah, you can try it.
The original connectors aren't rated for that much power by the spec, but physically.
Oh, no. I mean the mate and lock connector that had like one 12 gauge or.
Oh, yeah. That will be used for the 12 pin. But
exactly.
Let's say.
But you can get one of those to a 6-pin PCI Express power connector, for example, and you can maybe get 2 of those adapters, feed them into an adapter for an 8-pin connector. Do that twice, except since, power supply cables tend to have all of those sharing wires. They're just kind of daisy chained off each other. So suddenly like one 12-volt wire is trying to carry, 30 amps through it? Like that's a bit of a...
When you start thinking of all those edge cases, I mean, at that point, the people are doing that on their own. At
that point, you just put your faith in OCP.
Isn't that why there's a new ATX 12 volt spec coming out that's supposed to fix all that?
That's another thing.
Completely unrelated.
I think that's just another thing that Chris and I have talked about.
And actually, we went into pretty extensive.
I can't hear what people are saying because you're talking at the same time.
Yeah, I was gonna say we did go into pretty extensive talk about that last recording, I should say.
Yeah. I don't know what time is anymore.
Yeah, 12 volt can die. We can move to 12 volt, 20 volt, or 24 volt.
Honestly, yeah.
But that's another big change that would require a full change of everything, not just a connector
let's
change.
do a bunch at once. Screw it. Why not? Genuinely, why not do all of this at once?
Yeah, I want to plug my computer into the same plug that you put your dryer in or something like that.
Oh, you mean the 240 volt, right?
Yeah,
no, you can actually do that. You can get a 240 volt outlet and you can plug a server into it, and it is slightly more energy efficient.
Correct. And actually,
240 volts is normal.
I remember back in 2016.
It's true in the United States as well.
Yeah. Back up until 2016, because I stopped paying attention to that point. I don't know if it still exists, but most of the power supplies had a toggle for 240 volt versus 120 volt.
They don't have that anymore.
Now they mostly do it on smarts. They don't need to actually toggle it anymore. They can just accept 50 or 60 hertz, 120 or 240 volts.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the thing is, in America, it's okay because if you get the wrong setting, it doesn't turn out. But if you try that in
Europe,
Chris,
it's something slightly different than that. So in Europe, for the most part, most phases are 180 degrees out of phase or across the live neutral.
Right.
But in North America, 3-phase power is becoming so popular for transmission where then it's converted to 208/120 volt for houses and apartments and buildings where it's only 180 degrees.
Split phase power.
120 degrees out of phase between them. So basically every electronic power supply had to be able to adapt to that. And the byproduct of that was that it can now support 50 or 60 hertz or up to 240 because there was no reason to only stop at 208. Right. So now that basically allowed all the chips, like all the TI driver chips for switching power supplies, everything else, to just adapt to everything. And then, of course, China clones all that tech. Then we get all the cheap stuff that gets made that's now fully compatible basically with any voltage, any frequency across the globe, except for the output voltage, which you still have 12, 14.5, 19, 23, or 16 volts AC on some sound equipment still. Just
actually, you dork.
So nice. Real quick, the last thing I want to touch on with the 3000 series graphics cards. This is just going to be a quick one because we did bring up power supplies. MSI, as in response to the 3000 series GPUs being announced, has released their own MPG GF power supplies intended for the 3000 series GPUs.
What? They're making special
my
power
God, you
supplies?
just assaulted me with words, dude. Where
Yeah.
is
So basically, what we're looking at is MSI's MPGG F Series 80 plus gold GPUs. This is a 650 watt, 750 watt, and 850 watt variant on PSU. Basically, this goes back to something that we briefly touched on earlier on with the power requirements.
This is just a standard power supply.
It's a standard power supply, but it's a standard power supply, but it has more GPU power connections for this modular power supply, and it does come with a default cable for that 12-pin connector for the new G.
What do you mean? So it's more set up for like SLI and tri-SLI?
No. Basically, what you're looking at here is you're looking at a power supply that's actually configured for modern day GPU configuration, where you have enough GPU power connectors to be able to power what you want without having to buy a 1,000 watt power supply.
Oh, that sounds like a good thing.
Yes.
It sounds like just buying any Sonic.
Honestly. I mean,
do we know who the OEM is for these new MSIs?
They haven't announced yet, but we will find out once these things actually hit the market.
Because they
really don't need anything besides Superflower, but
they don't
it's
look
all
like
good.
Sonic units from the modular outputs, from what I'm used to.
Yeah. But Superflower's modular looks really similar as well.
So these ones here, what I'm seeing from the MSIs, they've got the split 24 volt to deck.
Hey,
it's like a 12 plus a 10.
Actually, hang on, that's cool at all, but I don't care. Frick, on this podcast, we like Sonic, and we don't suggest brands other than Sonic.
Damn.
So I guess the Corsair shills haven't come here yet.
Frick,
Okay.
Frick, if you don't like Sonic and you prefer other brands, then that's okay. But get the out.
You're wrong. You're wrong. Superpower Antic Master Race till I die.
No, Superpower is good, but I do prefer Sonic stuff. So, all right, move it. Okay, so we've definitely beat this Nvidia dead horse way too long. So I want to move on to this one. Are you guys familiar with Intel's press release video that they did last week in regards to 11th gen's CPUs?
I didn't watch any of it, but
okay.
This is a link to OneDrive.
Well, okay. So basically, that first link is a link to the actual press release, and the shorter link underneath of it was Gamers Nexus's analysis of this. Because you know what, I allude to Gamers Nexus a lot because Mr. Steve Mann's really funny. And in this video, he was basically ranting about the fact that throughout this 35-minute presentation, there was a point that Nvidia or Intel couldn't even name their new CPU verbally because the new product SKU is a really, really dumb name.
Sounds like part of the course for Intel.
There was a point in the video where you just hear the guy like pause for like 3 seconds when he was about to read out the GPU name and then decided to say 11th gen Intel instead. Give me one moment. I'm going to.
It's much better than the imitators.
And then plus one of Intel CPU names never not been like a jumbled mess of numbers and letters anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing is like so the 10th gen Intel CPUs are everybody has been complaining because they're ridiculously long names that are kind of illegible. But on these 11th gen, these correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, but I'm pretty sure this is the mobile line, so that also doesn't help anything. It's like 11854 G7 or something like that.
Yeah,
they just sound like monitor names at that point.
The same thing as 1065 G7. I really don't see any problem with the names.
I think it's silly, but there is one thing that I wanted to make. I really wanted to talk about this because I thought the entire presentation was funny because the entire time they were just talking about how AMD was the imitator brand. And here was a chart that Gamers Nexus put together in regards to, a benchmark that they did of how many times certain words and phrases were said. So competition and derivatives that was stated 27 times, AMD was stated 12 times, 4800U, which is an AMD CPU.
I really appreciate the subtitle here, measured using 2x human ears with 3 test passes per ear, validation pass with 2x human eyes.
Yeah. This man seriously gives no craps anymore, and I love it. But then something else that was really entertaining was there was another point that Steve pointed out in the presentation where the presenter stated, or the presenter said, we don't believe in benchmarks. We think benchmarks are for arbitrary use cases. We think that that CPU and hardware performances should be utilizing industry benchmarks.
Well, so they actually just posted a picture of how many times Nvidia said AMD, and they didn't mention it all. Here's what Intel needs to understand: when you're a market leader, you don't address the competition and like announce them in public like that.
Sounds like they aren't a market leader, then, Frick.
Yeah,
well, but they still are.
Nvidia's doing it right. That's how you properly announce. First of all, especially when you're talking about a new product launch announcement.
Your new product.
The last AMD conference they did, half of it was like them comparing themselves to Nvidia because they need to, because they're like second. But when you're the top of the top, you don't do that, and I'm not sure why Intel doesn't understand that.
So the point was made that. So I correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Intel still had like a 70% market share over the entire CPU space, which is still very significant, but it's a lot lower than it was, 4 years ago.
I mean, not in consoles; they're still getting.
No. I mean for like server space, laptop space, and
enterprise. Then yeah, enterprise for sure.
Well, server space, just standard consumer processor space, and mobile processor space. Intel still has the market majority, but this 4800U comes out and it's actually proving to be a very competent CPU on a laptop. Go figure. And it seems like Intel was just completely offended by this. So they had to go out of their way to say imitator company, AMD, the 4800U, basically, I don't know what marketing rep was so offended by this 4800U, but this is like the most petty thing that I've seen from Intel in a long time.
Yeah, it's funny.
So you think it's them being offended, or you think it's them trying to like taint the narrative so that when people think of that, they'll make sure, oh no, every time it was mentioned here, subconsciously it's crappy. I mean, that could be a tactic too.
No, honestly, I think this was just some salty executive over at Intel who approved this kind of thing or said, "Hey, this is the direction we need to go."
You guys are overthinking it. It's not because of that. It's just because Intel's very bad at marketing. Like,
that's true.
There's really nothing to it. Like, Intel is not very good at marketing, and now they're very, very quickly like losing their lead, and they know it, and they're panicking, and I don't know what to do. Well, let's just convince everybody that we're still good. It doesn't work, but But
what I was going to say, because I mean, your point is absolutely valid. More so, what I was trying to start out with, but I mean, I will say, because subconscious marketing has always been a thing. Look at infomercials and look at crap like that. Subconscious marketing is always huge. Pay certain personality to put this product in the background, hopefully in order to convince, hey, this guy uses it. Basically what Intel did is they pitched the 4800U to all the people watching this thing.
Yeah, they just gave all that free they just spent basically the equivalent of millions of advertising dollars for AMD.
Yeah.
That's basically what they did.
Well, what I found funniest was that Intel's been going on and on about we want to advertise real world features that people are going to use, not benchmarks. But they actually failed to talk about one of the biggest things of 11th gen is that the new iGPU.
Oh yeah,
and the fact it has dedicated I think it has 2 HEVC 10-bit encode pipelines, 2 dedicated ones, separate from the actual iGPU itself, which unlike the Ryzen APU, needs to use just general GPU encoding to handle that. It's also got like VRS, it's got Intel's integer shading, which has been proven to be slightly better than the Vega integer scaling. It does more.
How can you displays? Temperature scaling that's slightly worse? Actually, I heard a dog collar.
Performance.
Is that whiskey? Oh, I see what you mean.
Yes, whiskey just got taken outside.
When whiskey comes back inside, you should pet him a lot. I love whiskey.
Yeah, no, like integer scaling on Intel is actually going to be a lower performance hit than on AMD, where they just did it in shaders, whereas Intel actually dedicated hardware to it. Is the main difference, but quality-wise, it's still the same.
Right. So, admittedly, there's not really a whole lot to talk about with the Intel CPU. Like, it's a new CPU. The GPU or the iGPU that you mentioned was so completely overlooked in this presentation that it was kind of disappointing in a way.
Hardware Unboxed also did some reviewing of the Ryzen 4800U versus all the Intel stuff and how much better it was doing. And right now, the other saving grace that Intel didn't talk about was the fact that they're a lot more true to the 15 watt mode.
Right.
Whereas the 4800U was using more towards 18 watts in the 15 watt configured mode. But it was still doing more than that percentage worth of performance increase for that power. So it's still getting stuff done in less time and using less actual power consumption overall. But Intel failed to mention any of that stuff in their own twisted way.
Yeah, which is absolutely hilarious. Intel is really garbage at marketing. All right, before we get too distracted, I'm moving on to the next article we got here. So TSMC has announced that they are planning to have 3 nanometer process node in production in second half of 2022.
Yeah, It's going to be for small dies. It's going to be for like phone stuff.
Sure. So basically, the big takeaway from this is they did announce earlier this year, and I know we talked about it, that 5 nanometer was due to come out in Q2 2020, which now we're starting to see coming into production. N5P, which is their newest revision of the 5 nanometer node, is allegedly coming to market in 2021, with which should be a 10% power reduction and a 5% performance increase over Node 5. And with Node 3, second half of 2022, they're looking for a 25 to 30% power reduction over Node 5P and a 10 to 15% performance increase.
Yeah, I think the N5P, it's not enough of a boost for most, like I said, most mainstream larger applications, but I think the N5P we're going to see a lot more in things like automotive processors, AI edge process like the Tegra and Jetson boards from Nvidia.
Right.
ARM might be able to, now that ARM's getting a lot more spotlight now and investment as a potential x86 competitor. If people can get rid of using the stupid bulky x86 instructions we've come so used to using, ARM could make a really big move if it can make use of these smaller nodes that it typically hasn't in the past.
See, I think that's a good point, but I don't foresee that coming within the next decade. I mean, it might, but like the likelihood of that, I mean, the only way I could see that actually happening is if Mac's move towards the ARM processors really does become an industry foothold, and people.
I think it will. The amount of new processors coming out with ARM bases that have x86 emulation on them is pretty massive, especially from the Asian markets.
Yeah, but keep in mind, a lot of the kind of processing is like server space processing. I mean, like
that's the big customers though. Look at AMD. We see Ryzen, like we love Ryzen as PC users. But Ryzen itself is only maybe 5 to 10% of their chip sales.
Sure.
Most of their stuff is going to be server or
no, but like that's what I'm saying though. Is I'm talking about like there would have to be some sort of shift from the general consumer space where x86 is phased out or just goes into an emulated state, and I don't see that really becoming a thing unless
Windows is already working on that. Look at the Windows Surface tablets.
Is it true?
An Intel chip.
Okay.
No, they are using Qualcomm and some stuff.
And they emulate the x86 stuff. It's limited. You're not getting like everything. You're not going to get like the AutoCADs and Adobe Premieres and stuff like that. But for the general x86 instructions, they're able to emulate those in ARM with near
100%
efficiency.
Also requiring with like the Windows Store that everything be available in like multiple ISAs. So like Yeah, you've got your x86 version and you've got your ARM version.
Yep, which is going to be a huge push for ARM or other ARM-like competitors, which is another reason why there's the whole thing of Nvidia wanting to buy ARM after just acquiring Mellanox. That's going to create a huge monopoly in Nvidia's territory, which I'm not a fan of.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I guess my perspective on it is like that kind of shift would have to be something that would be seamless for just general users.
It's already mostly there. Consider how many servers run on ARM to begin with. A lot of supercomputers are ARM based.
But once again, you're talking about servers where the applications are specially catered for different use cases. I'm talking about like the general PC user space.
PC is a very small amount. Most people are going to be using Chromebooks or iPads or their smartphones.
No one's using Chromebooks.
Yeah, nobody uses Chromebooks. I have a Chromebook and it's not running Chrome.
Well, actually, you know what, Simmons, I want to ask you, if we're talking about all the different like revenue streams that AMD is doing and how they're like trying to stretch out as much as possible, how much money do you think they can make from that new partnership they just did with F1 and Mercedes-Benz?
I don't follow, actually. You want to tell me about that?
Oh, yeah. So well, it kind of relates to the story that's coming up, but I did read that AMD and Mercedes just announced a partnership together. I'll give you the link right here.
Okay. It's going to make no difference, Frick.
I don't know how much money could they make off this thing?
Wait. This is an AMD sponsored F1 team. Frick, no.
What? Yeah, it's not going to make any difference. AMD was sponsoring Ferrari for like 10 years. It made no difference.
And F1 teams are limited on how many flops they're allowed to use for compute for doing simulation.
Remember that time the reporters saw Lisa?
It wasn't the advertising we're talking about. It's
shut up.
It's the second part of the article where they talk about they're going to use a bunch of AMD gear, like they're going to use server processors and like laptops and all this other stuff. That's what I'm talking about.
They did that with Ferrari as well, and it made no difference.
Yeah. Hey. So remember that time that Lisa Su was at an F1 race and a reporter took a microphone in her face and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you speak English?" And
she was very nice about it.
Something that somebody says on Reddit.
No, that genuinely happened. It's on video.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to transition to this next article. So yeah, we did mention before in this podcast that AMD really isn't doing a whole lot right now.
So just to be totally clear, Simmons, no money whatsoever from this Mercedes deal, right? No, not even any potential of money.
I mean, sure. I mean, it's basic. Sure, they might be providing hardware, but this is basically a glorified sponsorship. Just don't read into it too much, my guy.
Wait, Simmons, you wanted to talk about AMD's other hardware that they just announced.
That's what I was about to transition to before I was really interrupted by Mr.
Okay. Please.
Who's interrupting whom? Am I contributing?
Yes. All right. So
can I interrupt you?
I also want to interrupt you.
I hate both. All right.
Hey, Jack, am I interrupting you?
It's the first rule of the internet, Simmons. You don't say what you hate because then everyone's going to do it.
Yeah. Actually, the first rule of the internet is you don't talk about the internet. Oh, that's the other thing.
No, that's Fight Club. You don't talk about
No. The first rule of the internet.
Shut up. We don't talk about Fight Club.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier.
Goddamn rule of Fight Club, Simmons.
I'm going to server mute you.
Oh, do you have that permission?
I don't think he does, but I can do this.
Okay, so
you probably broke the recording.
No, it's fine. So we mentioned earlier in the podcast that AMD really doesn't have a whole lot going for them in terms of competition, and even with their new GPUs, they really are not going to be able to compete, or it's not very likely to compete with what Nvidia has to offer on the side. So AMD is decided that they're going to branch out, and they want to strike back at Nvidia with a new bicycle.
Oh, yes. By bicycle, you mean GPU, right?
I've got the perfect joke for this. It's not really going to work because it's a picture. Okay. AMD took down the giant that is Intel, and now they're taking down the other giant.
Okay. And the joke is that it's a giant brand bicycle.
I mean, keep in mind, though, an AMD bicycle is going to provide you far better ray-traced graphics than NVIDIA can.
That's a good point, dude.
It's a lot better than Nvidia's bicycle.
I mean, honestly, I support this move because I support anything that gets gamers to go outside and kick footballs.
Oh, yeah.
But this doesn't do
How
that.
are you supposed to kick a football with a bicycle?
Well, first of all, you just take a foot off the pedal and you take a swing at the football. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you not familiar with golf cart golfing?
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Didn't they do that in the Jackass movie where they just drove golf carts into each other?
Yeah.
God, I wish I could do that in real life. Hey, Andrew, so since you're an expert in this domain, how valuable do you think this bicycle would be if parted out?
$80, $90.
Nice, okay.
Okay, so the
it's garbage.
bike that AMD is marketing here it has a retail price of $300, and the mountain bike also $300.
Nice.
It only costs $50 to ship to anywhere in America.
Nice. $349 in total. That is about the price that a high-end AMD graphics card is worth. Abs.
What is the logic for this exactly? What's the reasoning?
I don't know. Like I just feel like this is just merch that's supposed to target gamers. Like, honestly, I think what Chris said is probably like the most accurate thing, where it's like, hey, gamers like our products. Hey, all of Reddit really likes AMD. So let's sell them bicycles.
These goddamn basement dwellers to get some exercise.
All right.
It's funny because like they chose like their black and white bikes aside from the orange accents, but the AMD logos, they didn't use the AMD green. It's using the older AMD Aero logo. Like it's odd branding on an odd product for even AMD. And I've been to some of their LAN parties that they've hosted, and they had some weird merch they handed out. This is different.
I could honestly see that when the horse flu pandemic finally does die down a bit, and these conferences start becoming a thing again, that they start just handing out these bicycles to the people who show up.
Yeah, God, I wish I could
be doing their payola. They're bribing.
Honestly, okay, so I did make we did talk a lot about Gamers Nexus earlier. I would love to see Gamers Nexus Steve get one of these mountain bikes and take it down a trail just to see it fall apart.
Walmart bikes are about the same quality as that, and also they're a bit cheaper.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm not wishing ill will on Steve, but I feel like Steve would absolutely do a review on the main channel and on his alternate channel on this bicycle and how garbage it is.
Yep. But I'm just, while we're on the topic of like actual big company merch, have any of you actually bought like merch from a big company, like a T-shirt or something, and worn it around publicly?
No.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is like
so not to be a shill, but lttstore.com has pretty damn comfy shirts. Okay. They are comfortable shirts. They're much better than you're going to get from a local store like any clothing store.
Hey, can I interrupt with something very important? I was just handed a plate of cookies.
Good.
They came from Betty Crocker mix, I believe.
Good.
These are pretty okay.
I'm glad you like them.
Yeah.
No. So both Axie and I are in. We work in the IT field, and one of the things that happens is like when our companies end up purchasing like a major hardware or software purchase from vendors, they always end up sending some merch. So the only like big brand clothing that I wear in terms of like IT companies is stuff that I was given for free.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, how's the quality on it though?
Well, so the FortiGate polo I refuse to wear because FortiGate is a god awful company.
Wait, FortiGate? Isn't that just a scandal that occurs in Florida?
No, FortiGate is a firewall manufacturer.
Wait, how do you spell it? Because I'm thinking of the state of Florida.
FORTI gate.
Oh, FORDI.
No, TI as in Tango.
I heard like Florida Gate, like the funny state where all the
I heard that as well.
So the FortiGate polo that I received was like one of those athletic wear polos. Those really lightweight, soft material ones. It's about the same quality as a $5 polo I purchased from Walmart, but it's got the branding on it.
Yeah, that's probably why, because it's branded. They're all shit.
I refuse to wear it just because I don't like the company, but it's still a nice shirt. F5, the load balancer company, they gave us a giant sack of stress balls, which were very entertaining in the office. Because stress balls are things that you can throw at your employees without injuring them.
They also don't break monitors when you accidentally miss.
Exactly. Many great stories from bludgeoning other employees with.
Simmons, you should get some lawn darts and chuck them at your boss.
Absolutely not. Those are illegal in the United States. All right,
But
moving
the
on.
cool lawn darts before they got recalled, just so we're clear.
There was when we used to do office gigs way back in the day, we had that same problem. Like we wanted to mess with people, but we couldn't like actually throw things. So what HR did, they said, okay, we want to build like team leadership and stuff. So she bought 5 or 10 Airzukas. If you don't know what an Airzuka is,
Yeah.
And so everyone in the office is just shooting each other with these big punches of air, which are surprisingly powerful. Like if
I would simply get a Nerf machine gun and win.
No.
30 feet.
The thing is, they're projectile-less vortex generators. So the vortex that those things produce are actually relatively significant.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if you could like scale that up and just turn that into an actual gun that could kill people.
Well,
it's just so much air, so hard that you die.
That's the thing, Chris. Is like those 50-gallon trash cans that are like $5.
Yeah.
People have absolutely done that where they like take like those heavy-duty trash bags and then just use bungee cords in the middle.
Nice.
And do the exact same thing. And
can it kill flies at the very least?
No, but it's really just annoying for whoever gets hit, and that's why it's fun.
God, I hope we can kill flies. I hate flies.
I mean, whether or not, I'm not going to get into the whole lore of this, but there is some beef between Nerf people and Airzuka people, because every time people would try to have a Nerf fight, the Airzuka people would come and like blow them at the darts to throw them off course.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's actually extremely funny, so I don't see the problem.
No, that's absolutely hilarious.
That's like funny Halo 3 memes in real life where you like throw a grenade or like smash a gravity hammer near a rocket and it just flies off course.
So actually, I do want to talk. I actually have something to talk about with that, but we'll save it for for the extras recording that we're going to do.
Wow, Andrew, I hate that headline.
So real quick, I want to just go over this one real quick. Chris had some choice words about this one, but Samsung accidentally released details of its upcoming 980.
Oh, yeah. This is what pissed me off at Simmons earlier, because I was trying to clarify some details about this to make sure that I was like actually going to get things right and not just like buzzedly stumble over some words and try to figure out what's going on. But yeah, no, Simmons is a bitch and we're not allowed to talk about things off air because, save it for the recording so we look.
It's funnier when you get mad on air.
Yeah, well, I'm getting mad now. I was going to say a word, but we already used the one F-bomb.
Lot more than once.
No, I'm fairly sure I only used it once.
I only counted
You
once.
used it once.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the only one who's allowed to. So
Get
TLDR. So TLDR, Samsung is releasing new SSDs.
Surprise!
Wow, shocker. It's almost like they do that every so often. So there have been some listings on e-tailers for the 980 Pro, the successor to the 970 Pro, creative name. Comes with a PCI Express 4.0 base controller, so it can do like 7 gigabytes per second instead of 3.5. Cool, great. That's, it's expected. It's about what we would expect. Now, the interesting bit is that the write endurance compared to the previous generation is now rated for half as much. It is rated for 600 terabytes written rather than 1,200 terabytes written. This write endurance is the same as the 970 Evo, which uses TLC flash. The 970 Pro, or I guess the Samsung Pro SSDs in general, traditionally used MLC flash, but MLC is kind of vague, but specifically like when people say MLC, they generally mean 2 bits per cell, even though MLC is just vaguely anything that isn't SLC. But 2-bit per cell MLC, that's what I mean by MLC here. That has been true since the Samsung 840 and the Samsung 840 Pro. The Samsung 840 was the very first TLC drive on the market. ever since then, Pro means MLC, Evo means TLC, and just the bare bones Samsung 840 as well. But yeah, so they've been doing that. And based on this decreased write endurance, it appears that Samsung is therefore switching over to TLC for the 980 Pro, which really sucks. I don't really have anything else much to say to it. It just kind of sucks. Like, yeah, it's good that TLC is finally reaching, this acceptable level of endurance and this performance that is good enough to saturate a PCI Express 4.0 by 4 link, but gross. Not a fan. I'm not a fan. It's whatever, ultimately.
So do we, with this reduced rated write endurance, are we expecting like the warranty that what used to be a 10-year warranty, now a 5-year warranty, to be reduced to the same level of warranty on the Evo drives from, I say, the 970 era?
Wait, that's the annoying thing. Hang on. Did they just decrease the duration of the warranty? Because if yes, that would probably explain it.
The 970 Pro, they reduced the warranty to a 5-year warranty from a 10-year warranty.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it's probably still 5 years.
So keep in mind the annoying thing on SSD warranties, which I found with the hardware with my Intel P660, is that the terabytes written write endurance almost always trumps the actual warranty period. When the people using these Pro drives, the majority of them are going to be people that have either server use or something else. They might actually hit the terabytes written for write endurance before they hit the years. It's like my Intel drives that had, I think, 100 terabytes written. I hit that in a year and a month.
Yeah.
It's supposed to have a 5-year warranty. So if something goes wrong on that, there's a good chance I will not get it replaced under warranty from Intel because of that fact.
Just turn off smart data so it stops recording how much you write to it.
Hey.
I think, actually, that the most worrying outcome here is not that the Pro moves to TLC, because that's fine, but rather that the Evo moves to QLC, because QLC kind of sucks, and it's not very good, and it's better than hard disk drives and whoop-de-friggin-do that's every SSD since the Intel X25.
I thought QLC was only on the QVO branded drives, though. I thought Samsung was at least doing us that.
I hope so, but referring to next gen, I mean, if the only thing that was meaningfully differentiating the Pro and the Evo was the type of flash you use, well, I'm not so sure.
I think because Samsung has the QVO line, though, that they brand for the really high capacities, I think they're going to leave all their QLC drives under the QVO branding to get that.
I would hope
might
so,
just see MLC disappear, and they'll strictly go to TLC plus SLC caching.
Here's the thing. The thing with Samsung is I did buy a bunch of their drives back in the day. Like, I have 2 Samsung 840s. And they were like good at the time, and I thought they were a good value. And I bought a 970 Evo because I think I got it on a pretty good sale, and it was actually like, I think when I bought it, it was like 2 weeks before the Evo Plus was announced.
Right.
But like, Samsung isn't really that good. Like, yes, their drives are usually top notch, but they aren't stellar. Like, they don't really stand out because you've got things like the WD Black, and there was a new I think Sabrent drive, like the P31 Gold. Hang on.
See,
that's why you look that up.
And they're like SK Hynix Gold P31. Yeah, it's just there are a number of top tier SSDs that are not Samsung and are often cheaper than Samsung. Like, there's no real reason to buy the whatever Pro because usually it's like a good 10-20% more expensive for the same damn thing.
So a quick plug here, Extreme Hardware, we do have, I can't remember his name right now, but we have a nice storage recommendation thread where we got a spreadsheet of all the M.2 and then SATA drives with a bunch of different columns. You can sort by the type of storage, if it's got DRAM, all that stuff.
Nice.
And like the XPG, I guess the ADATA, XPG SX8200 Pro, which I just picked up 3 of to replace my Intel P660 drives. The Pro version differentiates itself by having the better warranty, the longer write endurance, but also includes a stick-on heatsink with double-sided sticky thermal pads.
Oh, wow. That costs like 50 cents to mill in China.
But it makes a difference if you don't have a motherboard that has the built-in on all of its slots. Like Asus and ASRock, a lot of them, their second M2 slot doesn't have a cover on it.
That's correct.
You might want to stick that on there to get that slightly longer high performance period before it starts to thermally throttle. Whereas a lot of other SSDs, like the Samsungs, don't come with that option. Right. You're gonna have to get that separately or rely on your motherboard's cooling.
So the only thing I will say about Samsung though is, yes, they are not the spectacular drives of yesteryear. I would say like 2013, 2014, when the Kingston HyperX SSDs were some of the best.
We're talking about the OCZ era. Let's even further.
Vertex 3.
Yeah, back when like everything was using SandForce. Just
exactly. So the big thing I'm going to say is Samsung has the track record, which is why I feel like everybody does go with Samsung drives, myself included. I'm not going to deny that these XPG drives that you're describing are probably significantly better, but brand loyalty is absolutely a thing that people exhibit whether or not they want to admit it.
I'm smarter than that, so I don't do that.
Yeah, I know you don't. That's why you bought your Reatoro case.
Yeah, baby.
Wasn't Intel making drives that were like really, really good? And then
no, I actually own one of those. I have the Intel 400 gig 750.
They're like bottom of the barrel now, but that's because they were first gen NVMe. Like they were amazing at the time, and it was like, dude, you need like a Haswell E system to get the most out of this. It's getting like a gigabyte per second. Look at these random speeds. It's like twice as fast as SATA. It's like, wow, this is amazing. And now it's
660p. Whereas dirt cheap, it was $80 for a terabyte. Where the QLC operated in SLC mode, though, and I was hitting. Like,
so wait, who's the best right now? Who pound for pound makes the best performance drives?
I don't know.
Was it that XPG drive or the APG drive you were just
When I was looking into a bunch, I spent a few days looking into it, and that ended up being the best option for getting speed. The newest NVMe spec at the time with DRAM and a good actual write endurance on it as well.
How about this? Because I'm looking at PC Part Picker right now. I'm looking at drives that are 2 terabytes and up, sorted by price per gigabyte. Just a bunch of like no-name brands like Kingston, Inland, Team, AData, like all these companies that buy flash and controllers from elsewhere and just integrate them. Crucial BX500. $200 for 2 terabytes. That's pretty good. That's all in house. 870 QVO, 8 terabytes for $900. Like that's not really that good in terms of price per gig. QVO is really not that great, and that's Samsung's cheapest drive. Especially that capacity. Like, I'm really disappointed we aren't seeing like more 2+. Like,
but that's the thing right now is like with these really high capacity SSDs, regardless of the performance and the longevity, is the manufacturers are marking them up just due to the fact of, oh my gosh, look at all these terabytes you can have in a 2.5-inch form factor. Oh my goodness.
These terabytes.
Well, that makes sense for data centers because, RAID controllers and rack space and software licenses per node cost a ton of money. But like at that point, storage is the least of your concerns as far as cost goes. And like, yes, I will pay a 200% markup per byte if it means I don't have to buy 10 more servers.
And that's what it comes down to is I feel like they're using that exact same server logic on the consumer because right now,
but that really doesn't work in the client sector because clients are going to be like, oh, I ran out of SATA ports. Oh, here's a $20 SATA controller. It's got 4 ports on it. Like
that's true.
Also,
like consumers are going to do that, and frankly, we just have plenty of SATA ports, and we don't usually have the budgets for flash, so we'll just go hard disk drive anyway.
Keep in mind, it's also the whole economy of scales. Large capacity flash has a really hard time taking off in the server space, which means consumers aren't going to get the discounts on it.
Correct.
Because large capacity spinners, like Seagate's latest 18 terabyte Iron Wolves, can have their data recovered.
Yeah.
A 2+ terabyte flash drive or a flash storage device, whether it's M2, 2.5, whatever, that's a lot of data that, yes, you're going to have striping and RAIDs and mirrors or whatever. You still can't recover the data off that physical drive if something really goes wrong.
Because it's all encrypted, yeah.
So we're not going to see large scale flash until we get some sort of recovery for it, where servers can mass adopt it, which then consumers will then get those cheaper prices. So I think we're going to be stuck at this $80 per terabyte.
Yeah.
For decent speeds and warranties for probably at least a few years. Unfortunately,
I'm just stoked that terabyte SSGs are like cheap enough, because like I remember back in 2013.
Oh man,
it was like there was a forum we're not allowed to talk about maybe that was doing like a $2,500 for a rig giveaway every month. It was like, God, if I won, what would I do? Oh, I know, I'll drop like $600 on a terabyte SSD, and I didn't win, so I didn't get to do that. I found one of these SSDs for like $200 refurb and was like, oh my God, that's amazing, because contemporary drives were about $300 and now they're just, it's $80. That's half as much as my first SSD cost for 4 times the space. Like,
oh, absolutely.
I am loving this cheap flash. I just wish the drives themselves would get denser for simplicity's sake.
My very first SSD I ever purchased was a 120 gig Kingston HyperX drive, and I think I spent like $80 on that.
Oh no! My first drive was the Patriot, 32 gig. I think it was the PS200 or PS300, and that at the time was $300 for a 32 gig SSD.
Oh my God,
dude! I think
that
there was
barely saturated SATA 6, barely. But it was.
If I remember correctly, there was. I think like the first mass market Intel drive that hit like 120 gigs was like $3,400 or something like that. And that was relatively recent. Like that was 2008, 2007-ish, if I remember correctly. Like this wasn't back in like yesteryear. This was like 13 years ago. You know, we still had Core 2 Duos.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I just looked into it. So it's the PS100. It was actually only SATA 2 speeds.
Yeah.
Oh,
it topped out at 100 megabits per second sequential writes, 230 megabits sequential reads. So it's still faster than the fastest hard drive that most consumers could be able to buy. And that was MLC at the time. But yeah, 32 gigs, and that was a big drive at the time.
I am very disappointed that SSD MSRPs are not documented as well as they are. Like, lots of reviews don't really list them, and Intel doesn't even list the price at introduction on ARC, which is...
You can just check, Cynical, if you want. Just go to Camel and punch in the web page for it, and it'll tell you all the price history of it, so you can see it from the beginning.
When did Camel start? Because if it didn't start in like 2005, I'm not sure this is going to help but so much.
Ooh, yeah, okay. Well,
okay, just taking a look at AnandTech article from 2009 when Anand himself was still writing. X25M, 80 gigabyte drive, MSRP 225. X25M 160 gig MSRP 440. And this was trying to get OCZ to cut their prices because OCZ was selling 256 gig drives for $600. Like 11 years later, what are we looking at? That is $600 divided by, actually, let's do that the other way around. I apologize. 256 divided by 600, that is 0.42 gigabytes per dollar, whereas now we're looking at like what, 1,000 divided by 75, 13 gigabytes per dollar. So we're looking at like 20x cost reduction. Cost reductions by a factor of 30 per byte. And even then, that was when SSDs actually started hitting mass market and actually started kind of decreasing in price, because shortly before that, you know, there were $1,000+ drives just because they hit 100 gigabytes.
All right. So, we need to wrap up very soon, but I do have one last article that Frick presented to me earlier on. And this is in regards to Tesla. Tesla apparently is fighting back against owners hacking their cars to unlock a performance boost.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like something Tesla would do.
So I thought this was pretty interesting because me and Andrews and Simmons talked about this a while ago. I was talking to them about like what they think the future of cars is, and they were like, "It's electric. It's all electric," mainly due to the fact that your average Tesla has like potential in it that hasn't even been fully utilized yet. So what's been going on is for the couple of years now, Tesla's been selling vehicles where you can upgrade how fast it can go, right? So you can boost it by like 75 kilowatts, 60 kilowatts, something like that, right? Well, recently they announced one for the Model 3, the dual motor model, and the price for this acceleration boost is about $2,000, and it gives you 50 horsepower, and it shortens the 0 to 60 to 3.9 seconds. So $2,000 for a boost, which I guess I don't know what the equivalent for a gas car would be if you can even get something like that. I'm sure there's something, but I don't know if it'd be $2,000. Anyway, so what ended up happening is because this is the internet and because it's mostly software based, a bunch of people online, and I guess I shouldn't say where it happened, but because I think that's super illegal, right? Somebody online something, right? They posted it somewhere where it allowed them to install a mod that allowed them to get this patch for free. And for a while, it was fine. However, Tesla found out about it, shut it down, and said, now if you try to boot it up or do anything with it, it says incompatible vehicle modification that could result in risk of damage or a shutdown. You can still drive the car, but you just can't reach the height you were supposed to before.
Wow, gee golly, it's almost like selling a mechanical device with features locked behind software. Doesn't make any damn sense when I can buy like an 80s Corolla and modify it and get that power, and I can tell Toyota to like suck on my pussy and they can't stop me.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for you here quickly.
No,
you have Tesla Model 3s with this performance model, these dual motor ones. That's a lot of car for not much money that was not previously really available unless you're in the used market or the modified market.
Okay.
So you have insurance companies now that have to insure these things, and not so much just for the vehicle. The vehicles are easy to replace. Those are cheap. But the people's lives, the lives on autopilot and all that stuff. If you buy this from Tesla as the add-on package, that's going to be tacked onto your VIN, which means the insurance companies can charge a higher premium because they know there's a higher potential for you to hurt yourself or someone and cause actual personal damage. If you're illegally modding your vehicle, just like when you modify any vehicle with a turbo or bigger supercharger or anything else, the insurance companies are going to want to know so they can charge a higher premium. They're not going to stop you from driving or take your insurance away.
Okay,
they just want to have more money.
This isn't the insurance company doing anything.
Chris,
this is Tesla doing things.
Yeah, Chris, shut up.
I'm going to very carefully explain why you're wrong. No, shut up. You just tell your insurance company you did the mod. I don't know about Canada and the US, but in the UK, if you do any modifications to your car, you just phone up the insurance and you say, it's got more power now, I did a thing to it. And then they say, okay, this is how much it'll be now. Like this, it's not Tesla doing this for liability or because of insurance or whatever. It's Tesla doing this because they're greedy.
Correct. But also keep in mind, so I know this is going to be a really weird line that I draw here, but copyright and trademark law.
I don't give a
if the owner of a copyright or trademark doesn't actively try to defend
that's
trademark
incorrect.
Copyright.
No, that's
if
incorrect.
They just choose to ignore
it, fuck up. You're already wrong.
If Tesla chooses not to do something about this, they're going to look bad
that's not
in the eyes of insurance and potentially increase the rates for everyone else.
This is the equivalent of overclocking.
Axie, shut the fuck up. Copyright still applies even if you don't defend it. That applies to trademark. Even if copyright infringing things are still floating around, it doesn't matter because the copyright still applies.
Okay, I did say copyright and trademark.
Yeah, and that's wrong because you said copyright and trademark, and it only applies to one of those.
Pretend I didn't say copyright there.
Okay, so
it's the
point is you're a corporate bootlicker, and you want Muskie Husky to say what you can and can't do with the hardware that you bought.
I'm going to jump in here. And no, what the issue here is not the fact that it comes down to driver safety. No, it's not that either, and it's not anything about software, trademark or copyright.
It literally comes down to people are getting a thing that Tesla wants to sell you for money, that in a way that doesn't give Tesla money, and Tesla has the means to stop you from doing that. Right. Therefore, they are stopping you from doing that.
No, basically,
that's all it is.
Basically, this is the equivalent of doing it, or of you purchase a 10700K, and Intel charges you a $50 paywall to unlock something in your motherboard BIOS to allow you to overclock. That's all this is.
It's not even that. It's like you can flash the microcode of a 10700 to a 10700K, and then Intel tries to sue you to stop you.
Yeah, exactly.
You could do that. We're going to look that up.
No, and that's just what it comes down to. The hardware is all still there. Nothing is changing in the hardware. This is quite literally a software lock, a paywall, if you will, that prevents you from getting this additional performance. Now, if I remember correctly, these vehicles, when they are modified, or you pay the $2,000 to get this boost, if that's what you even want to call it, all it is it adds an additional setting to your car that you flip this setting over to this drift mode, if that's what you want to call it, and it allows you to drive 50 horsepower faster. That's the thing. It comes down to all, like, if you even look at it like a gasser engine, you can put whatever money that you want, or just do similar ghetto mods that you can somehow boost the performance on your vehicle. And the issue here is the manufacturers of these cars, they might not like you doing it, but there's nothing that they can do because you have the liability of the vehicle.
Tesla doesn't have any liability here either. Here's the deal. What happened is fundamentally the economy just breaks when you introduce things that aren't like physical goods with scarcity, which means now Tesla is selling the same car. Some of them go faster than others because some people spent more money for some software locks.
Correct.
And in the end, you're not actually adding value or anything to this. It's just give Tesla money so you can use the thing that you already bought. Like, it just breaks. It just falls apart. There is no scarcity here. There is no value to this. The only reason you have to buy this is because Tesla says you have to buy this.
Yep.
Oh, here's another thing that's fun. Because of Tesla's model that they do for this sort of thing, BMW are doing it now where... Well, actually, I don't know if they're doing it now or if they're going to do it in the future.
Oh, the subscription service for heated seats?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, basically what happened is just the economy broke, and now companies don't want to sell things if they can't get like guaranteed monthly revenue out of it, which is why why sell you a video game when we can sell you a live service? Or why sell you a $500 heated seat upgrade when we can charge you $20 a month to use it? Like, why make money one time when we can make money indefinitely? Like, it just breaks.
Yep.
The way I put it to a friend, I guess the tweet's deleted now because it's more than a month old. That's sad. The way I put it to a friend is that not only do we have companies that are trying to sell things without like creating wealth in the process, we have companies that are hiring people to prevent you from using the things that you purchased. When you purchase a car, you own the car. If you purchase a BMW that has subscription service heated seats, you still own those heated seats. That is like your property. You own those resistive heating elements in and around your butt. You can still use those. I would hope not. Not with my aftermarket mods. But like, you own all of this stuff. There's nothing stopping you from hooking up an Arduino or like a switch and a thermostat. Like, you can still use this. It's just the company says that you can't because we put computer chips in everything, and now we can just do this. Like, this is not going to last. This is going to fall apart at some point. I predict what's going to happen, incidentally, in the future, especially if things like GPS speed limiters in cars becomes like widespread. No, frick, this has been proposed. Like the EU has proposed this.
Speed limiters? That's the
GPS speed limiters. Like, yes, you are on this road. You are not allowed to go more than this speed. Like, yes, that is absolutely a thing they are. It's absolutely a thing that's been proposed. Like, my car loses its lock on the maps like once a week. I stopped using navigation. Yeah.
There's a road near me. It's a 60-mile-an-hour road. But every GPS system I've ever used said it's a 30-mile-an-hour road.
Yeah, like, it's wrong. It's not going to work. It introduces safety issues because, frankly, sometimes you just need to go fast to get out of a situation. And in the end, you're not really making anybody safer, but what this is going to do is it's going to make older cars more popular. Like,
so Chris,
I would
you
much
say
rather.
But I can give you a quick, for the mining industry in Canada, we have, for our big, massive scoop vehicles, like the big, massive, they make a Corolla look like a grain of rice vehicles.
God, yes.
They have speed limiters built into them that use actually the radio amplifiers underground and LTE repeaters to figure out how fast they're going, because obviously there's no GPS, and they limit their speeds to prevent accidents or just prevent fuel
keep in mind,
that is a bit different.
This is an industrial vehicle. This is being used by companies, not individuals. Like, this isn't a passenger car that is privately owned. This is a corporate-owned industrial equipment piece. Like,
but the technology's there already. They're already
I agree. You misunderstand. My issue isn't that the technology is not there. My issue is that we're just going to see things become limited by software. It's not my car doesn't go fast because I don't have a big enough engine. It's my car doesn't go fast because I didn't get the software unlock and because the GPS says so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because actually what you're referring to there is very similar to what a lot of trucking companies have. Like, if you buy a modern era semi-truck, a lot of these companies pay whoever for this GPS based speed limiter on the semi-trucks, where it tracks the miles per gallon and it does a reduction of speed if you are not meeting a certain miles per gallon threshold on the vehicle. That's something that the company's dictating.
And I literally don't care if a corporation does that with their fleet vehicles. Like,
but then you have trucking companies where you've got these semi-truck drivers who own their own trucks. They drive however the hell fast they want. I have been down back roads of West Virginia where these trucks are going 90 miles an hour down a hill. That's terrifying.
Yeah. Okay, so how on the flip side then? So that most speed limits.
Like, this goes really, like, I'm not even entirely sure if they could do this, but if Tesla wanted to, just out of the blue, let's say there's some model that they don't want you to have, like, how Apple slows down their phones with updates.
Yes, they could lock you out.
Could they send out a bunch of firmware updates that slowly make the car slower and slower?
Yes, they could do that.
Could they do that?
Well, I mean, take away the potential horsepower. It wouldn't necessarily make it slower for the general most population. Because think about it, like, for speed limits, right? If you have, like, I'm not advocating that I want this to happen. I hate the idea of, like, controlled cars remotely that you can't control yourself, that someone could just shut off at any time. But if you could GPS speed limit every vehicle on the road, instead of having a 65 mile per hour or 120 kilometer an hour speed limit on a road, because you know that that's only the 85 percentile. You know there's people going 130, 140. If every car was GPS speed limited, those speed limits could be that 130 kilometers an hour if they know that they could limit it to that and keep the roads that much more safe.
No, they won't. Not in Canada. In Canada, you've got roads that in Europe would be like 130, 140 kilometer an hour roads. But in Canada, they are like 40 kilometer an hour roads.
We're starting to get some increased, and it depends on the factors, but they are opening up some of them, even like locally in my
Dude, actually, they repaved some roads in the next county over on one of the major highways, and they dropped the speed limit to miles an hour, even though it had been like 55 for decades. They dropped it down to 45 after repaving. There's no reason for it. It doesn't make anybody safer. But it doesn't make anybody safer at all. There's like a stretch of that highway closer into town where everybody does like 50 to 55. It's 45 through there. like 45 mile an hour speed limit. Everybody does 50 to 55, and odds are pretty good that you're going to get blown past somebody doing 60, 65.
Yep, I think they just lower the speed limits because it's slightly less wear on the roads.
I mean, probably, and that's okay, sure, fine. But I think the real reason a lot of times is revenue from tickets, because we don't fund
Okay, yeah, okay. So on that note, I think before we go off onto that rabbit hole, I think that's better suited for extras. I think now's a good time to wrap up. This is a much
Simmons, you can also eat my pussy.
Yes, absolutely.
Wireless access points.
This is a much longer recording that we've done in a long while.
Shut up, Andrew.
Stay tuned for our extras, which will be on air probably next week.
And
it'll be on air. Who cares? I don't listen to us. I only make podcasts. I'm not some degenerate who listens to them.
Well, yeah. If you listen to,
I just insulted all of our audience. Who cares?
No. I do not imagine you ever want to listen to yourself. Let's be real here.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not. I hate myself, dude. Like I drive fast so I don't have to be alive.
Wow. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And goodbye.
I had too much Fireball.